And welcome back. This is the AJA Sports Show. I am Ace, joined by, as always, with Jay and Andrew. We are bringing to you today running backs galore. We're going to be breaking down the top 20 running backs in the NFL's for the NFL season next year. We will give you guys our takes and let you guys know how we think about our top 20 guys and some of the guys outside the top 20. We have a lot of names to get through. We will do our best to be informative and let you guys know how we feel, while also dropping some nice stats for y'all. The first name on our list is probably the most controversial one from last year because he didn't play much games and you were keeping him on your roster and not knowing what to do with them, and then probably just getting frustrated and just smashing him to the free agency pool. It was Christian McCaffrey. So last year he scored under 100 fantasy points, 225 rushing yards. He scored 5 times. Targeted, he is the PPR machine in the running back realm. Had only 17 catches for 149 yards in an incomplete season with 1 receiving touchdown. Jay, start us off with Christian McCaffrey. How are you feeling about his return next season?
Yeah, so he's still RB1 for me. I'm pretty sure he's still RB1 for pretty much everybody. 2019 was the last full season. He had over 1,300 rushing yards, 20 total touchdowns. Finishes RB number 1. The year before that, he finishes RB number 2 in 2018. Just to give some perspective for how dominant he was in 2019, the next closest running back to him was Aaron Jones. He finished with 315.8 points and averaged 19.7 fantasy points per game. Christian McCaffrey finished with 471.2 points and averaged 29.5 fantasy points per game, literally almost 10 points more than the second running back. And what was crazy is, last year he was hurt. He was still unbelievable. I mean, in the 3 games he played, he had 90.3 fantasy points. He was on pace to average over 30 fantasy points a game if he would have been healthy. I mean, granted, we can't really average that out, because it was such a short sample size. But still RB1, not even close considering the volume he gets in the run game and in the pass game. We have some question marks here going forward with some guys like Alvin Kamara and Derrick Henry where they do a lot of one thing and not really a lot of the other. Just a quick little DFS perspective. I mean, there was a time a few years ago, 2019, where it was in cash lineups. Christian McCaffrey was like $12,500, and you were dumb if you didn't lock him in. Like, you were literally you were punting tight end, punting defense, and just locking in Christian McCaffrey, because if you didn't play him in cash, you were not cashing. So Christian McCaffrey, RB1, not even close.
Perfect. Well, that makes the case right there, folks. If you have any choice for RB1, you are wrong. Jay's got it on lockdown for you. Well, thank you for that, Jay. Yeah, I mean, only 3 games played, so he's most likely going to play more than 3 games this year. Saquon Barkley is the next name on our list. Andrew's going to break him down for us, but he didn't play a full season last year, and Fantasy Pros has the top 2 guys as the top 2 guys that were frustrating to draft last year. So Saquon had 19 rushes for 34 yards and 6 receptions on 9 targets, and that was it. So what are we thinking about Barkley this year, Andrew?
Yeah, so he was off to a pretty rocky start, but again, like, the sample size was super small after only like a game and a half, I guess you could call it, and then being, the torn ACL derailed the 2020 campaign. Throughout his career, though, like, he's been such a productive running back. He gets a ton of touches, and he turns those touches into a ton of yards, whether it's out the backfield or getting handoffs. In 2018, he had 350 touches and managed over 2,000 yards from scrimmage. In 2019, he missed a couple games. He missed 3 games in 2019, but in those 250 touches he still managed over 1,500 yards from scrimmage. And he surpassed the 1,000-yard mark in the rushing yard department in both those seasons. So the other thing about Saquad, we'll call him, because, the big old quads, guy's just a tackle-breaking machine. Ball security has also never been an issue with Saquon, just for people who are worried about that. He's only fumbled once, but has never lost a fumble in his NFL career. So if that matters to you as a fantasy running back for season long, then you're gonna have no problem with Saquon keeping hold of the football. So the number 2 projection is again, it's a little weird, right? Because the top 2 running backs didn't really play a full season last year, but I don't think anybody has any issue with placing them in the spots they're at, and I could definitely see them both finishing in those spots. I mean, at the lowest that they would be is probably like, I wouldn't see either one of them falling out of top 3, especially not Saquon. So,
yeah. So last year we had the kind of a balanced top 3. We had Kamara with went off on that 6 touchdown game. We had Derrick Henry rushing for 2,000 yards. We had Dalvin Cook, who had a real nice season. So, yeah, I can easily see these two guys bumping those three out. But it's going to be competitive, and it'll be nice to actually see some healthy players going into our next season. So let's send it back to you again, Andrew, with Dalvin Cook. So, as I just mentioned, real nice season last year. He had 1,500 plus yards rushing, 16 touchdowns on the ground, which is pretty nice. 44 receptions for 361 yards. So, pretty good for a couple of short receptions here and there for one receiving touchdown. So you obviously are high on McCaffrey and Barkley, but how do you see Dalvin Cook next year?
Yeah, I'm high on Dalvin Cook as well. Number three going into next season. I don't imagine him falling out of the top 5 at any point, as long as he stays healthy. Over the last 2 seasons, because he's been healthy, after struggling with a little bit of playing time in his first few seasons in the NFL, he's managed at least over 1,600 yards from scrimmage and at least 13 total touchdowns on 300 plus touches, while maintaining a 4.75 yards per carry average and a 9 yard per reception average. So very just uber productive when he's on the field. His backup, Mike Boone, is also gone. So he wasn't really taking touches away from him anyway. So as long as he's healthy, he's just going to get even more work. He finished last year as a top 5 running back, but has been a top 6 running back over the last 2 seasons. And he finished second in rushing yards, only to the 2,000 yard rushing king Derrick Henry, because the Mike Vrabel just wants to hand the ball off to that behemoth all the time. But no, Dalvin Cook at number 3, tremendous back. Like I said, as long as he can stay healthy, that Vikings offense goes as Dalvin Cook goes, and he'll be just, again, health has not been a concern the last 2 seasons, and if you can bank on him being healthy in 2021, he's going to be one of the top running backs off the board, and will probably stay within that top 5 range or in that top 3. So I love me some Dalvin Cook next season, and love to see it. He, like I said, he's the one that makes the Vikings offense go, and he's going to be crucial to any sort of success they're going to have.
Yeah, for sure. It's a good point about how being kind of like the engine for the Vikings. They have flashy Jefferson, and Thielen is a nice source of reception, so keeps them going, and he should be a good play all season long. Someone who keeps their team going and might be even getting more target share because the QB1 is gone is Alvin Kamara. We'll get Jay's take on him right now, but just to put it into perspective, 932 rushing yards last season, 16 touchdowns. So wasn't a 1,000-yard rusher, but brought it in just as many touchdowns as Dalvin Cook, and 107 targets. He caught the ball 83 times for 756 yards. So obviously a real balanced PPR guy for you, and for 5 receiving touchdowns. So what's Kamara's outlook next season without Drew Brees and maybe the offense changing over there in New Orleans, Jay?
Yeah, so the next 2 guys, it's kind of funny because they both get it done on literally the opposite ends of the spectrum, right? Alvin Kamara, as you mentioned, didn't even break 1,000 yards last year. When you look at this list for guys who played a full season, he only had 187 rushing attempts, which is pretty low for a standard running back, right? He still finished RB1 last year in PPR formats. RB9 in 2019, RB4 in 2018, and in 2017 RB3. So just solidly consistent in PPR formats. That 1 point per reception is really going to keep him afloat there. He only saw 12.4 an average rush attempts per game last year. He saw about 7 targets per game. You might see that stay right around stable. I don't see Jameis Winston being like a huge upgrade or downgrade from Drew Brees. Drew Brees was a guy who did like to check the ball down. Alvin Kamara is always a big part of the passing game, as we mentioned. But when you look at him, the volume scares me, especially when you look at season long. Obviously, he's shown he's able to do it, but Derrick Henry had 378 carries last year. Dalvin Cook had 312. The last year Christian McCaffrey was healthy, he had 287. I mean, these guys are getting over 100 more rushing attempts, in some cases 150, 160 more rushing attempts than Alvin Kamara gets. So, it's always a little scary for me, especially when I'm looking at running backs for season long. I'm looking for the volume, but he's come in year out. He's made sure that he's able to get those fantasy points through the receiving game. So as long as that continues, he's going to stay right up in there in that top 4 category. So,
yeah, I mean, he probably has based on last year's play, the highest upside for being a healthy player in that top group we just went over. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the New Orleans Saints offense changes and how that changes his production. And going on forward, it should be interesting to keep an eye on. We'll bring it back to you again. So you had just mentioned Derrick Henry, 2,027 rushing yards last season, 17 rushing touchdowns on the ground. Not really a target source, but he had 31 targets, 19 receptions for 114 yards. So, yeah, all his production is coming on the ground. Would you be comfortable with getting him again next season, Jay?
Yeah, so I'm a guy who likes drafting Derrick Henry, especially in season long. He's a guy that doesn't get injured very much, doesn't miss time, big running back. He's had over 300 rushing attempts in both the last 2 seasons. So the thing, like we just talked about, right? One end of the spectrum is Alvin Kamara. The very next end of the spectrum is Derrick Henry. He only had 19 catches last year. He's barely averaging a catch per game. That's unbelievable for a running back, especially given today's NFL. Hasn't finished as RB1 over the last 2 seasons, again, with over 300 rushing attempts. Last year, he finished with 17 rushing touchdowns, and the year before that, he finished with 16. And, I mean, that's a ridiculous amount of touchdown percentages. But it just goes to show you how important that one PPR point is, especially when you're looking at PPR formats. RB5 last year, RB5 in 2019, RB3 in 2020. He's a guy that's going to stay up there because, again, he's healthy. He sees the volume. And as Andrew mentioned, Mike Vrabel loves to run the ball with him and play defense. The defense hasn't been super great over the last 2 years. They could see that improve with a few of their offseason signings. But again, it's just kind of up to you, right? Are you more interested in Alvin Kamara, who's going to get it through the receiving game, or are you more interested in Derrick Henry, who's going to get it done in the rushing game? It's kind of ironic that they're literally 4-5 here. That's usually how it seems like they finish. They're going to finish in that top 5 grouping. It just depends on where the variance goes. With Alvin Kamara, is he going to catch more balls? And with Derrick Henry, is he going to score those 15, 16, 17 touchdowns like we're used to seeing him do the last few seasons?
Yeah, for being like primo rusher number 1, Fantasy Pros has him ranked at number 5, and not necessarily because of his lack of volume or his lack of talent. It's just you have to catch the ball now as a receiver to catapult yourself into that top 3 mix, and so he hangs on there just by sheer force, and that's how he runs the damn ball. So
right, and it's not like anything, right? Like Alvin Kamara could go catch a swing pass, not gain a yard, and gain a full point, right? It's the same thing as Derrick Henry, down set go, handing the ball off and running into the line of scrimmage. One of them gets you a full point, one of them literally gets you nothing. It's just when PPR formats that 1 point is so important, and it shows again with those rankings and how they finished over the last few seasons with that high touchdown percentage and not really playing the factor as much as you think it would.
Yeah. We're going to go to the next name on our list, Ezekiel Elliot out of Dallas. So he pretty much played most of the season. Andrew can talk a little bit more on that, but we kind of did have a down year from Zeke. So 244 rushing attempts for 979 yards, 6 touchdowns, caught the ball 52 times for 338 yards and 2 touchdowns. So probably my first question mark on my board. What do you think, Andrew, about Zeke for next season?
So I don't want to, speak for Jay too much, but I think this is probably his favorite running back, in the NFL, at least over the last couple of years. I don't know how it stands now, depending on, how he, but I'm kind of right here with the feed Zeke. I think with all of Dallas's receiving talent and the weapons that they have, I still think Ezekiel Elliott is probably the most talented player on that roster on the offensive side of the ball. And again, despite having a quote down year in 2020, he still managed to finish as a top 10 as a PPR running back. And in his 5-year career, he's never finished lower than 12 and has been top 10 in every other season. And the only reason he finished as the 12th ranked running back in 2017, he only played 10 games because he held out for the contract. In every other season he's played at least 15 games and finished as a top 5 running back 3 out of those 5 years. And he's always managed to get 1,300 yards from scrimmage. So again, feeds Zeke, especially with Dak coming back. The thing that I really like about Zeke is his involvement in the passing game. A lot of people kind of had a stigma about, him not being a dual threat running back. Over the last 3 seasons, he's consistently seen over 70-plus targets with a high of 95 in 2018. He caught 71 balls last year, pulled in 52. So the reception percentage for a running back is really encouraging. That's kind of like, a percentage that you'll see like Alvin Kamara hover at, like in the low 70s. So again, Ezekiel Elliott, as long as he's healthy, which he usually is, again, the only time he missed time was because he held out in 2017 to get that contract extension. And he's just going to be productive. He's going to find the end zone. He's a great, just natural runner of the football. And one thing that Johnny's always told me from watching film is that he's a running back who falls forward all the time. So he's always going to be, he doesn't have a lot of negative plays when he's running the ball, or if he's catching the ball out of the backfield. He's always going to be falling forward, and has been in the top 5 of first downs gained from rushing attempts in the NFL every year of his career. So number 6 is pretty good. It's going to be hard for him to get up there in the top 5, I think, because we're just, the top 5 running backs are just so top heavy, like in this positioning group. But I wouldn't be shocked if he makes his way up in there, but definitely top 10, probably 6 is where he's going to finish, I would say. I'm excited for Zeke as well. Like, just as excited I am for Dak to come back, I'm excited for him to be with his boy Zeke again and be healthy, just to make this offense be just one of the best in the NFL.
Yeah, bringing up Dak, I mean, Dak Prescott's probably the best quarterback to running back so far on this list. Like, I mean, we're looking at this list, and I don't really trust any of these other running backs quarterback. So maybe that unlocks the secret to Zeke's success. And I think their line had a down year last year too. So I can see the upside there.
He had some injuries.
Yeah, he might be a buy low for, like, he probably is going to finish the top 5. Let's just speak it into existence for our boy Jay and his Zeke Eats take.
He's won me a lot of fantasy leagues, baby. Hard not to like the guy.
Yeah.
So we're gonna talk about Jonathan Taylor, the rookie last year. Had a nice season, 1,169 yards for 11 touchdowns. Didn't start every game. Kind of played in a 3-headed running back offense for some of those games. He caught the ball 36 times for 299 yards and 1 touchdown. Has, again, a new quarterback for next season, so a couple of these names on this list will be playing in a different setting, so to speak. What are we thinking about Jonathan Taylor for the 21 season next year, Jay?
Yeah, so he finishes RB6 this year. He scored 252.8 fantasy points. That's an average of about 16.9, almost 17. That average would have put him about 8th, and that was in the 12 games that he played last year. He averaged about 16.8 touches, about 10.4 yards per touch, which is pretty good. The question for him, right, when we talked about it a little bit coming into the season, was coming out of college, was his pass catching ability. Elite with 36 catches on 39 targets. Phillip checked down Rivers, made sure that he was able to get some looks there. The big worry for me is the same worry that we saw last year. Nyheim Hines and now Marlon Mack is coming back. These dudes see playing time. Hey, Jonathan Taylor is better than them in pretty much every aspect. He's more explosive. He's bigger. He's stronger. He's faster. He's shown he can catch the ball now. And Nyheim Hines still saw 42% of the freaking snaps last season. I don't get it. I think that could have eaten in a little bit more. Marlon Mack tore his freaking Achilles in the very beginning of the season. So, Marlon Mack coming back, Nyheim Hines coming. Those are 2 guys that I can definitely see eating into him. When you look down, I'd rather have Austin Ekeler. I'd rather have Aaron Jones. It's just guys who I'm a little more comfortable in their target percentage and their rushing percentage. Jonathan Taylor is a better running back than both of those Indianapolis Colts running backs I just mentioned. But the fact that they consistently still see the field, especially like Nyheim Hines in passing situations, we're going to talk about a guy in Antonio Gibson, based on that, I'm not going to go too out of it. But there's a guy who he didn't even see the most snaps on his team last year, Antonio Gibson. So, yes. There's a couple of guys, man. And I'm going to talk about a few of them where it's just like I was very high on them just a few weeks ago. The offseason market came and blew me up and got me really annoyed. So, Jonathan Taylor is still looking good at 7. I'd have a few guys over him. The question is going to be, is he going to be able to get that target share that we're looking for in a elite back?
Yeah, I'm with you. Gotta maybe let the rookie now into second year go. we'll see if Frank Reich wants to pull the switch. And maybe you just let him play a little bit more, just because new quarterback in town. Got to give him a little bit of assurances and have your best runner run it. So we'll see how that plays out next year. We're going to throw it again back to Jay with Austin Ekeler, as you had just mentioned. To go over his stats real quick, 116 rushing attempts for 530 yards and 1 touchdown. He was injured a lot of the season, so that's why we're not looking at a large sample there. 54 receptions though on 65 targets, which was real nice, for 403 yards and 2 touchdowns. So healthier season for him. What are we thinking on Ekeler next year?
Yes, he's another PPR stud. Over the last 2 seasons, he's averaged 6 targets per game. That's only behind Alvin Kamara. He would be behind Christian McCaffrey, but obviously Christian McCaffrey was injured last season. One thing that was rather encouraging is Austin Ekeler was not seeing a high rushing percentage. He wasn't seeing a lot of rushing attempts. The Chargers actually ran the ball 29 times per game last year, which was up from 22.9 in 2019. I don't know if that had to do with getting a rookie quarterback and trying to make him a little more comfortable. They had Phillip Rivers the year before that. Obviously, check down Rivers, loves to throw the ball. I mean, even if it's the check down stuff to the running backs, it's just a little extension of the running game. But I like that. Hopefully, Austin Ekeler can see a little bit more of those. In 2019, his last full season, he saw 108 targets. That season, you would think Alvin Kamara is probably up there, but no, he was second. The only person above him was Christian McCaffrey that year. So he's another guy who I think in PPR formats looks great. I think he's looking good right there at 8. I like him better than Nick Chubb. I like him better than Jonathan Taylor, who I just mentioned. So I think he'll finish right around there so long as he can stay healthy. Justin Herbert, we're hoping he can. I mean, if he takes another step in his sophomore year, it's only going to be great things for that Charger offense. As a Chiefs fan, I'm hoping they don't. But yeah, Austin Ekeler at 8 looks pretty good.
Yeah, and we'll see how Brandon Staley changes that team dynamic a little bit. For all intents and purposes, Anthony Lynn isn't necessarily like the biggest risk taker. So Staley kind of coming out of that McVay camp, likes to will probably call in his number for some bigger plays, take some more risks. So I do like Ekeler there for next season. So we're going to throw to Andrew next with Nick Chubb. He was rushed for 1,067 yards last season for 12 touchdowns. Plays in the dual threat running back offense. Only caught the ball 16 times for 150 yards. So borderline top 10 player. What do you have to say about him, Andrew?
Yeah, so that's the big thing with Nick Chubb, right? He's in the top 10 because of how good he is just rushing the football. But the 18 targets and the 16 receptions are not encouraging, especially because now Cleveland has re-signed Kareem Hunt and has shown a willingness to basically just pull Nick Chubb off the field on third downs and have Kareem Hunt out there. And even 2-minute drills and 4-minute offenses, you're going to see Kareem Hunt out there a little bit more than you're going to see Nick Chubb. He missed time for the first time in his career last season. He missed 4 games. But even though he missed 4 games, he's one of the best. He's one of the most explosive runners just out of the backfield, just pure rushing the football, like I mentioned. He was second in the NFL with 12 rushes of 20-plus yards, just four behind rushing leader Derrick Henry. And in 2019, he led the NFL in 20-plus yards rushing out of the backfield. He averaged more than 16 fantasy points per game despite the low target share, and averaged 5 yards per carry. So the placement here is pretty good. I could see him kind of falling out of the top 10, possibly just because there's a lot of pass catching backs that we're going to get to in between the 11 through 20. So there's a chance that he does fall out of it, but I think will probably, as long as he's healthy, you'll see him get over the 1,000 yard mark. There's opportunities that are going to be there for him to stay in the top 10. But I wouldn't necessarily bank on it. He's not my favorite running back, for fantasy purposes, but he's just one of my favorite running backs just to watch in the NFL period. I mean, he's he was, I always tell John, Jay, I feel like he was plucked out of the 1960s and is just over there just bulldozing people left and right and just taking hats off of freaking heads, man. It's awesome to watch Nick Chubb run the ball. So again, for fantasy purposes, he might not stay in top 10, but he's probably going to get over that 1,000 yard mark, barring any sort of injury.
Yeah, so talking about people bulldozing people down, he kind of reminds me of Derrick Henry a little bit when he runs. And if you look at Derrick Henry's stats and you look at Nick Chubb had half the amount of rushing attempts last season. You double Nick Chubb's attempts, he's a 2,000 yard rusher, probably surpassing Derrick Henry. So barring a Kareem Hunt injury, and maybe even not even then, maybe they would still kind of stick to Stefanski. Might still stick to the 2 running back machine offense just to keep Chubb going for as long as he can. But yeah, Chubb is a great runner. So we aforementioned Aaron Jones is next. We know some of the guys on this panel like him a lot. He just signed a deal to come back to Green Bay, so we were kind of not sure if Green Bay was going to bring him back. He was an 1,100-yard rusher last season for 9 touchdowns, caught the ball 47 times for 355 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jay, why don't you tell us about Aaron Jones, and do you see him as a top 10 rusher for next year?
That's actually Andrew's department. Andrew, you got Aaron Jones?
Yeah, I could touch on Aaron Jones for a little bit. I like me some Aaron Jones. He's the only Aaron on the Packers that I like. Screw that guy Rodgers. But this is one of those things where he had like a counterpart like Jamal Williams, right? Thank God he's gone. Thank the Lord. I no disrespect to Jamal Williams. Go have fun in Detroit. But in my opinion, he's the most underutilized. He's the underutilized running back in the NFL over the last 2 seasons. He followed up 2019 with 19 total touchdowns with 11. And that's despite missing 2 games and splitting time with Jamal Williams and AJ Dillon. So I think he has top. I mean, I wrote in here that he might have top 5 potential, but now we're going through it, and I don't know. I think top 10 is more likely, maybe sliding up into 7-8 range. But he finished the last 2 seasons as a top 5 running back. So in only 201 attempts too, he led the NFL, and this is like why I really like him. Like, he's super explosive. In only 201 attempts, he led the NFL for most rushes over 40-plus yards with 4 last season, more than any of the running backs that we're going to see on the list. His pass catching ability is very good out of the backfield. 47 receptions on 63 targets. That's going to be a number that we probably see go up a little bit because AJ Dillon, who still is there, is a rookie who just kind of gets a lot of red zone work. He's not really like a big explosive back like Aaron Jones kind of is. And again, thank God Jamal Williams is gone because they got him on a discount too. 4 years, $48 million. That doesn't seem like a lot of money to me, to be honest with you, for a guy like Aaron Jones who's been such a fantasy stud over the last couple seasons. So number 10 is great. I think he can elevate over Nick Chubb and possibly over a couple other guys in the top 10. Even I like him a little bit better than Jonathan Taylor too, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he's kind of in that fringe area right now in the rankings, but he has that pass catching ability that Nick Chubb doesn't necessarily get called upon. So if you're looking for a little bit more upside, Aaron Jones, free Aaron Jones might be the man to take there. We'll see, but yeah, you're right. $12 million a year is not bad for RB1 for the next 4 years. So kind of interesting to see how Green Bay visualizes him as their running back going into the next season and thereafter. And that'll wrap up part 1 of our fantasy football running back breakdown. We're going to post part 2 tomorrow. I'll put a card up here at the top for you guys to click on through to see the next part. Hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.